Amid the stark gray landscape of Puritan Massachusetts, the air all around steeped in its judgment and its iron-bound discipline, Hester Prynne emerges not merely as a character defined by transgression, but as a testament to the endurance of the human spirit. The Scarlet Letter is often read as a narrative about the nature of sin and its consequence. But beneath the shadows of the scaffold and the sting of community censure, the story is fundamentally one of radical and steady persistence. Hester Prynne does not crumble under the weight of the letter A emblazoned upon her breast. She transforms this mark of exclusion into a badge of identity, navigating the crushing machinery of social isolation through an unflinching commitment to her own reality. Hester's persistence is not a rebellious outcry. It is, instead, a quiet, architectural feat of the soul. Banished to the margins of town, she establishes a cottage that becomes the sanctuary of her introspection. While the townspeople view her through the distorted lens of their own moral anxieties, Hester inhabits a world of her own making. She accepts her punishment, not because she agrees with its inherent malice, but because her internal moral compass has evolved beyond the rigid and binary moralities of her captors. By engaging in needlework, she turns her isolation into a profession. Her craftsmanship becomes the bridge between her ostracized self and a society that paradoxically depends on her artistry, even as it despises her person. This persistence is most visible in her relationship with her daughter. Pearl is, in many ways, the living embodiment of the Scarlet Letter. A wild, untamable force that mirrors Hester's own hidden depths. Through the arduous, lonely task of raising her, Hester demonstrates a maternal tenacity that transcends the judgment of magistrates and ministers. She does not hide Pearl, she allows her to be, providing the child with the freedom she herself was denied. In this domestic struggle, we find the core of her strength. She refuses to let her spirit be bifurcated by shame. She integrates her past, her present burden, and her hope for a future into a singular, cohesive identity. As the novel progresses, we see the transformation of the Scarlet Letter from a symbol of adultery to one of being able. This shift is the result of years of consistent, unvarnished labor and character. Hester's persistence is not about seeking forgiveness from a community that is fundamentally incapable of offering it. This is about reaching a state of grace that exists entirely apart from mere human approval. She remains in Boston, inhabiting the scene of her greatest vulnerability, precisely because running away would be an admission that the town's definition of her is true. By staying, she dictates the terms of her own existence. The tragedy of the characters surrounding Hester, Dimmesdale's suffocating hypocrisy, and Chillingworth's corrosive desire for vengeance, serve only to amplify the brilliance of her stoicism. They are trapped by their own secrets and hatreds, whereas Hester, by owning her truth, finds a path to a kind of freedom that her persecutors can never reach. She teaches us that persistence is not the absence of suffering, but the ability to carry that suffering without allowing it to distort one's core values. Hester Prynne reminds us that when the world decides who you are, based on a singular moment or a fixed label, the most subversive act you can perform is to continue existing and working and growing, according to the merits of your own inner light. Hester's endurance is a call to look beyond the surface of our own public failures and private shames to find the persistent truth of our own worth. As we look at the constraints we place upon ourselves and the labels we fear from others, we might consider the ultimate question of the human condition. If we stripped away the judgments of those around us and the heavy mantle of our own past mistakes, what foundational truth would be left standing in the silence of our own hearts?
Upon the breast a burning thread of crimson shame and quiet dread. The village turns its cold, hard eye to watch a fallen sinner die. But in the dark a needle soars, reflecting earth and painted skies. She builds a home from scorn and stone and walks the path she carved alone. The mark is worn, a spirit cast, deep from depths of misery. She does not break, she does not bend. She finds a start where others end.
Hester Prynne's enduring resonance is not merely a product of Hawthorne's prose, but a reflection of the universal human struggle to maintain autonomy in the face of social condemnation. Her ability to captivate readers for generations seems to stem from a few powerful, interconnected factors. Hester perfectly embodies the complex tension between the individual and the collective. She represents the universal experience of being judged by one's community, which makes her a relatable figure for anyone who has ever felt marginalized, misunderstood, or unfairly labeled. Most characters in literature who are subjected to public humiliation are often broken by it. Hester, however, demonstrates a radical form of resilience. By taking the symbol of her shame and refashioning it with her own hand, she transforms a mark of exclusion into a statement of identity. This act of reclaiming the narrative is deeply empowering to audiences across different eras and cultures. Unlike many static literary figures, Hester undergoes a profound internal evolution. She moves from a place of forced humility to a position of quiet, self-determined authority. Watching her navigate this transformation offers readers a blueprint for how one might survive trauma and social exile without losing one's integrity. While the novel is immersed in a rigid moral framework, Hester herself is remarkably nuanced. She is neither a perfect saint nor a stereotypical villain. Her flaws, her hidden love, and her intellectual independence make her feel incredibly human, allowing readers to project their own complexities onto her experiences. The story exposes the fragility of societies that rely on public shaming to maintain order. Because human societies, regardless of the century or the geography, often struggle with these same dynamics of judgment and hypocrisy, Hester's story feels perpetually contemporary. She remains a mirror held up to the prejudices of any community that demands conformity at the expense of compassion. In many ways, Hester remains compelling because she is a pioneer of the inner life. She demonstrates that the most important space to be won is not the public square, but the sanctuary of one's own conscience.
Yes, I'm very familiar with the Scarlet Letter and with its opening chapter, The Prison Door. Although it is only a few pages long, it is one of the most carefully constructed introductions in American literature. Hawthorne uses symbolism, historical commentary, and moral ambiguity to prepare the reader for everything that follows. Hawthorne begins not with his heroine, Hester Prynne, but with a building. This is a deliberate narrative decision. Before we meet a single character, we encounter the physical embodiment of Puritan society. The prison is described as old, weathered, and built from heavy oak timbers studded with iron spikes. Hawthorne notes that nearly every new colony established by civilized people has first required two institutions, a cemetery and a prison. This observation is both practical and philosophical. Death and crime accompany humanity wherever civilization is founded. Already, Hawthorne invites readers to question the idealism surrounding the founding of New England. Rather than portraying the Puritans as heroic builders of a godly society, he reminds us that they expected sin from the very beginning. The prison, therefore, represents not merely punishment, but humanity's permanent moral imperfection. The chapter immediately establishes the atmosphere of Puritan Boston. This society values order over mercy, law over compassion, and communal judgment over individual conscience. The prison stands near the cemetery, visually linking punishment and death. Together, they symbolize the two inevitable consequences of human existence according to Puritan theology: death through Adam's fall, punishment for ongoing sin. Notice that Hawthorne never openly condemns the Puritans. Instead, he lets the architecture speak for them. The harshness of the prison reflects the harshness of the society that built it. This indirect method of criticism becomes one of Hawthorne's greatest narrative strengths throughout the novel. The chapter changes dramatically when Hawthorne introduces a wild rosebush growing beside the prison door. This is perhaps the single most famous symbol in the novel. Its beauty appears almost miraculous against the dark prison walls. The contrast is immediate. Iron, flowers, punishment, mercy, civilization, nature, judgment, compassion, human law, divine possibility. Hawthorne even suggests that nature itself has planted the rosebush as an act of pity. This moment introduces one of the novel's central questions. Can mercy exist where society offers only punishment? The rose suggests that it can. Throughout the novel, Hawthorne repeatedly contrasts nature with civilization. The prison is entirely human-made. The rose grows naturally. The prison attempts to control human behavior. The rose simply exists. This distinction foreshadows many later scenes in which the forest becomes a place of freedom, while the town represents social control. Nature, in Hawthorne's imagination, often refuses to accept the rigid moral categories imposed by human beings. Equally important is the location of the rosebush. It grows beside the prison door, not somewhere else. Doors represent transitions. Readers are about to pass symbolically through this doorway into Hester's story. The rose serves almost like an invitation from Hawthorne himself. He tells us that although the narrative will deal with guilt, shame, hypocrisy, and suffering, there will also be beauty, sympathy, and hope. The rose becomes a promise to the reader. One striking feature of the chapter is Hawthorne's narrative voice. Rather than disappearing behind the story, he openly addresses the reader. He even remarks that perhaps the rose may offer some sweet moral blossom to those entering the tale. This makes Hawthorne something more than a storyteller. He becomes a guide. His narrator invites readers to interpret symbols rather than merely observe events. This style reflects 19th century literature, when authors often assumed readers wanted both entertainment and moral reflection. Although the novel appeared in 1850, its events occur roughly 2 centuries earlier in 17th century Puritan Massachusetts. This historical distance allows Hawthorne to examine his ancestors critically. Nathaniel Hawthorne himself descended from Puritan families, including John Hawthorne, one of the judges associated with the Salem witch trials. Hawthorne famously added the W to his surname, a change many scholars interpret as a symbolic distancing from that legacy. The novel therefore explores not only one woman's suffering, but America's inherited moral history. The Prison Door is an extraordinarily effective opening because almost nothing happens, yet everything important is introduced. Hester has not yet appeared. Arthur Dimmesdale has not yet appeared. Roger Chillingworth has not yet appeared. Yet the reader already understands the moral landscape in which they will live. Great openings establish expectations. Exceptional openings establish themes. Hawthorne accomplishes both. Within only a few pages, he introduces the novel's central oppositions: law versus mercy, civilization versus nature, public judgment versus private conscience, sin versus redemption, despair versus hope. These tensions will animate every major character and every important scene. Perhaps the most impressive feature of this chapter is Hawthorne's confidence. Many authors begin with action. Hawthorne begins with architecture. Many introduce characters. He introduces symbols. Many create suspense through plot. He creates suspense through ideas. The prison door and the rosebush become visual metaphors that readers carry throughout the novel. Every subsequent event can be understood as occurring somewhere between those two symbols: the prison's severity and the rose's compassion. For that reason, The Prison Door is one of the finest opening chapters in American literature. It demonstrates Hawthorne's remarkable ability to compress philosophy, theology, psychology, and historical reflection into a scene of remarkable simplicity. By the time Hester Prynne steps onto the scaffold in the next chapter, readers have already been taught how to read the novel, not merely as a story of adultery, but as an exploration of justice, mercy, guilt, and the possibility that grace can bloom even in the darkest places.